So now basically we will try to learn how these activity within Android is unfolding. In other words, the basic activity life cycle of an Android app, how it is working, how it unfolds, and when each of these activity events are being performed. If you're here for the first time, please don't forget to visit my page and subscribe the channel. You will find that on my channel, there are more than 500 video lectures based on PHP, Mail scripting, Maya embedded language, 3D graphics, from developing HTML, CSS, JavaScript to working on Android, Photoshop, multimedia technology, and so on and so forth. So these tutorials will be very helpful and very productive for you. So don't forget to subscribe, hit that bell icon, and receive notifications regularly. Remember, typically we have 4 main activities within our Android. We say we have something called onStart or a running activity. Okay, running activity, we say that running activity indicates that your app is running. We have a paused activity that indicates your app is at a paused state. We have something called stopped state, which means your activity has been stopped. It is no longer running, but it might still be in the background. And finally, destroyed activity, which basically means that your app is paused, stopped, and now removed from memory, and even in the background it is not being run. Okay, so these are 4 primary main activities: what we call running, paused, stopped, and destroyed. Okay, within these 4 activities, then we have few more stages as explained in the activity diagram. Within the activity diagram, you would find we have something called onCreate. This event is triggered when your app is created. So first time when your app is launched, this event is executed. Then onStart, which basically means your activities have started within the app. Then onResume means the operational functions of your app have started. So these technically 3 are all executed, but in a particular sequence. So Android uses these 3 events at 3 different points. Okay, then your app is in a running state. You can pause it. So for example, you receive a notification, or you're watching a YouTube video and you receive a notification, or press a multitasking video. You would note your video automatically gets paused because your app has paused, and now you're switching your focus to a different app on your drawer. Okay, so that means your app is paused. So if you're watching a video and you switch it, your app gets paused automatically. But then at the same time, if you have a music player, your music continues. So that means that your app is not paused. It is continuously on the resume state at the back end activity. So each app has a different structure. Let's go inside Android and try to follow and see when each of these activities are actually being performed. So on Android Studio, we created a very simple project, blank, absolutely new project called BSIT morning activity. Within this project, now we have an absolutely blank and canvas. Again, main activity.java. This is by default displayed to you. Now, as soon as you come here, you will find there is an event called onCreate. This onCreate event indicates your onCreate method. Now, this is included by default, indicating that your app, whenever you start to run this app, is onCreate, and it will pass certain methods that will create your user interface and create your app. Now, our task is to understand how basically other activities are being performed. So what I do is I create a method called on pub public void on start start. Okay, now once we create this basic method, what this means that your app is your function is created. Okay, sorry, once we create onStart method should basically mean that your app has started. Now it's giving me an error. It says overriding method should call super.onStart. Yep, and let this be private as well, protected, as this method is also protected. Okay, so since this onCreate is also protected, I will use protected, and it gave me an error. One other thing and good thing about your what we call Android is that it gives you error and it tries to solve the error automatically as well. Try to use that feature to resolve your issues. So for example, if I come here, it says onStart. It says overriding method should call super.n. There's a red line underneath it. There's a red arrow and red indication here. There's a red indication at the top left corner. All these are indication that this particular line contains an error. Use this well. So if you hover your cursor over this, it gives you that this is the error, add a super call to fix that particular error. So as soon as I click on it, see this, a super.onStart, it's automatically executed. Remember, onStart, this method I didn't create it, it already created an app.compact activity class. We are just overriding it. So we are just overriding the inherited method, and that inherited method requires that we call the super method as well. Okay, so this basically means that my super method is being called. Within this super method, just let me try to use log.i, and within log.i, let me give something called state, comma, onStart, semicolon. And onCreate set content method, let me just give log.i. I think we will give state. Okay, so now what basically I did, I want to just get an output on start activity. Okay, what log.i does that it will print the log at our logcat window. So if at the bottom you will find a logcat window, this logcat window will give you our logs that when we run the app. Okay, it's just like a simple output window when we use system.out.println for our desktop, for our Android, for our Java. So in Java, we use system.out.println to get an output on our console. Similarly, this can be considered as a console that prints the output. Okay, so we use log.i, and this is the state, because in other words, the name of your log. Okay, because there can be many logs, it allows us to search which particular log you want to go for it. So in this case, log I would be more feasible for log I, and we give it a particular name, so it becomes easy that which state I want to search for. On create activity is just the string that I'm going to print, and then just use a semicolon here. Similarly, I will use protected void and the method called on's resume, resume. Okay, so since this is the third method from our activity, onCreate, onStart, and onResume. So we have onCreate by default. We created a method called onStart. Super on start has been called, so that all the default methods that are supposed to be executed on start are automatically overridden and are called here. Okay, and then on resume, again it gives me a same error. It says overriding method should call super.onResume. Add super call. I said yes, and it solves the problem as well. Then I just create the log. Now how log works basically is just like printing an output on your log window. So we use log.i, we give it a name so that you can identify which log you are using, and then you give a string of whatever you want to get printed on. So I want to say activity on pretty. Okay, so I have these three basic activities being performed here. If I run this app, and I should not be getting any error. Okay, sorry. So I think this was capital L, and this also is capital L. So once we have this three created, and hopefully all these red indicating marks are removed from here, and your main activity has no red marks here, your errors are all correct. Now let me just execute this app. Okay, so hopefully when it gets executed, we will try to view our log and see these different states when each state is executed. At the same time, we will be performing and using onPause, onStop, and onDestroy method as well. But I've not gone to these methods yet. I'm just trying to see that if this is working and I get these three states right now. Okay, so basically what the idea here is to understand that how and when each of these methods get executed. So we will perform 2-3 different operations of opening and closing the window, and see how things go. Okay, so again, be patient with Android, let it install, and hopefully this will win. So now you see many logs being generated here as soon as our Android has started. So these are logs of backend log files that are being generated. Because there are so many different log files, that's why we need this variable tag name, okay, as state. This tag indicates that we can search for this particular log. Okay, hopefully it means, so it basically creates a name for this log activity so that we can search from all these different log activities. So now finally our app is running, and at the same time you would find that my logs have dozens of issues. Okay, so one thing we can do is, let me just find state log. So as soon as I go inside my search box and type state on, you can see that now I get only my particular logs. So that's the one way. And again, log basically means that there's no output on the actual window, but you get an output on your log window, so you can debug the code as you go along. Now, as you can see, the first thing we got was onCreate got executed, then onStart got activity, then onResume. Now, this thing has nothing to do with the sequence that I've wrote it in. Be very clear. These are just indicating that how my activities are proceeding. Now, let me just finish this and write what we call protected void, and let me just use, for example, onStop event. Okay, and similarly protected void onDestroy. And similarly, we will have, I think, on start, on resume, on start, on stop, on destroy. Okay, and then as you can see, there's already a red line here. If I hover my cursor over it, add to super call. If I hover my cursor it, add to super call. Then within this, I will just bring it up and go and write a log dot I bracket star bracket close semicolon inverted quotations, the name of the log, comma, inverted quotations, on stop activity. Okay, same thing. Let me just copy, and after this event, let me just paste this destroy. So we have created the functions for all these different methods that we use within our Android Studio. So we have something called onCreate, onStart, onResume, and onStop, onDestroy, onPause is missing. So protected void onPause pause. Okay, and then again it says that you need to inherit so that it understands that it is actually your system generated method. And then I just paste the log activity and pause. Okay, so now we have function for all these activities, and we try to understand how these life cycles work, which we basically try to explain. So now we perform various different operations of switching between multiple apps, and we see at which point each of these functions get executed. So we knew that once I start an app, my onCreate, onStart, and onResume, these three events are executed in a sequential manner. Okay, so these three methods are basically executed in a sequential manner: onCreate, onStart, and onResume. So it doesn't matter how these codes have been written, but these methods get executed in terms of your particular sequence. Okay, now if I go back inside my app and see this, what I do is I minimize this app from the point. Okay, I have not run this app again. So just let me click on this button, apply changes. So what happened that I closed the app. In this case, one of these events should have executed, but I did not, what we call, apply the changes of the code. So make sure you click on this button so your changes are applied and your activity is restarted. As soon as your activity is restarted, now you know that you have a create, start, and resume, pause, and stop events have been triggered, that your app has been paused. So if I click on my app again, okay, sorry, this is a different app. Where's my app gone? Here's my drawer, and my, I think, app should be this one. Okay. So as soon as I trigger this app again, you note that I have a start activity being performed. So if I go back, now resume, then pause, then stop, then destroy. These events have triggered. Okay. So as soon as we close an app, a pause, stop, and a destroy events are executed. So you note that every time you close, you start, you run an app, different activity sequence are being performed. So if I again start it, now you will notice that I have, after destroy, again create, start, and resume these three apps. Okay. After this, I go for a multitasking. So as soon as I multitask, now I have a pause and a stop activity being performed. Means my activity has been paused and stopped. So now if it is being YouTube, no, it will no longer play. So if I just close it, swipe it, now you see after pause and stop, destroy activity is executed. Okay. So this is what basically life cycle means, that when you start an app, certain actions are performed. When you minimize it, when you switch between app, or when you close it, different events are triggered, and we can use these events to perform various different tasks on our code. So every time we basically work, we have different codes available that we can perform. So I again open the start activity, and my activity create, start, and resume has executed. Okay. I go inside the multitasking, on pause, on stop has executed. I again click on it. This time again, start and resume has created. Okay. But at this point, create activity was not executed because previously it was paused and stopped. I went into multitasking, but I didn't close it. And then I again regained the activity. So the create activity didn't execute. This time only start and resume got executed. Let me show it again. So I go inside the multitask. You will note pause and stop has came. I again just click on it and I want to work with it. No create or got executed, start and resume went in. So this is what basically the typical life cycle of our system gets indicated. So at this point, after stop, it goes back onto on restart, and these two methods are executed. Okay. So this is how the life cycle works. Sometimes it might not be useful, or it's not might be important depending on what app you're developing and what activities you're needing. But at a larger case, this thing becomes very useful. So for example, if you're working with a bank app or a more security app, you would want to ensure that once your app is stopped, all activities are stopped, all transactions, all its backend processes are stopped at the certain point, and the app is destroyed and closed properly. Once you go into the resume mode, what should happen? If you are again going back into resume mode, check how long it was when you logged in previously, so that session has expired or not. So you require to re-log in or whatever the event you want to trigger. So if it is on resume, go back onto the app, fetch the latest news or latest messages. Or if you're on the Facebook page, once you close it, you go back into it. Should you continue from there, or a fresh pages loads up? So all this depends on what you want to do. Same thing happens with Twitter, Facebook, WhatsApp. When you switch between apps, they use these events to refresh their pages. That once the user comes back to my app from its resume state or pause state, he should be at the place where he left off. But if he's coming from stop and destroys, then I should start from the top and refresh the page. So we use these events to refresh our pages and refresh our apps at a designated point, letting or controlling what user sees and what user doesn't see. Do they need to log in again or not need to log in again? Okay. I hope I made myself a little clear. We will explore these methods in more tutorials later on. Okay. So now, thank you for watching.